What is up, my tricksters? It's your friendly neighborhood Yu-Gi-Oh! Superhero back again with a discussion video for today. I hope you guys are stoked about this. We're talking board breakers today. But before we get into that, Frank over here is going to let you know how you can support this channel. Take it away, Frank!
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to show you how to support this channel, because if you don't do it, I'm going to put a Cyber Dragon in your hardware, and it's going to bite you every time you buy something that isn't from the spring store. You hear me? Now buy a shirt with my face on it. Here's how you're going to do that. You're going to come over here. You see this little black dot? You're going to click on it. And you see this? It's going to bring you to a white page. Okay, there it goes. Then it's going to bring you to a page. You see all this stuff? This one right here is the one you want to buy, because it's got my face on it. You might also be able to support this channel by, going and clicking in the description of any video and buying a sleeve from your playmats. But they don't have to, if they don't have my face on it, I'm gonna be mad about it. Understood? Now I'm gonna excuse me, I'm gonna go glare and bend some more.
Now buy a t-shirt with his face on it, because he's giving me dirty looks and I'm tired of it. Anyway, guys, today we're going to be talking about board breakers. This will be kind of in a pseudo order. My goal with this video is to show you a variety of cards that are board breakers, but I need you guys to remember that the format has kind of evolved into this very weird place. Now, this video is inspired by the Kali effect, and inspired equally by Triff Gaming, ironically, because they were talking about the game and how that you either had to play a bunch of board breakers or you had to play a bunch of hand traps. Now, Kali pointed out that there's a lot of decks who are kind of going a little bit of the halfway route. They're like, oh, I'm going to play like 6 to 9 hand traps. I'm going to play 6 to 9 board breakers. Which that got me thinking, well, there's the board breakers that are seeing play, and then there's the board breakers that aren't seeing play, but us budget players don't always have access to those, to the high-powered ones, the ones that are seeing a lot of play. So I figured what I would do today is I'm going to showcase you those cards that everyone's talking about when they're talking about board breakers, and then I'm going to show you some cards that are board breakers, but they're not what you typically think of. And I'm also going to show you some of the other options that may be available to you if you do not have a whole lot of money. That is kind of going to be the goal with this discussion video. So the first card we're going to talk about are the ones that are seeing a lot of play by a lot of players. The first board breaker I have here is Forbidden Droplets. This card has kind of come off to the wayside a little bit. However, it is still seeing a lot of play. Sorry about that, my mustache is getting in my mouth. Anyway, This is still seeing a lot of play with certain decks because, one of the things that I've noticed is that this causes a lot of certain types of monsters to trigger in the graveyard. So there is still that aspect of it. So even though this card isn't as optimal as it has been in previous formats, it will probably be effective in future formats. So if you have this card, obviously keep it. But it's also expensive as hell. So us budget players can't really afford this card. Now another card that's in the same ballpark of around $50 to $100, because honestly, you don't want to, if you're a budget player, your budget's going to be anywhere between like anything under 100 to like 150. That's being generous, by the way. So if you can't afford these kinds of cards, you're going to need to find alternative options, which we're going to talk more about that later. The next one we have is the new Ultimate Slayer. This card is also very expensive. You could kill an entire budget just getting these kinds of staples. But the cool thing about this card is I've seen it also become a 2-for-1, depending on the kind of card you send or a search for later in the game. Because basically what you're doing is you're sending a Fusion, Synchro Xyz, Pendulum, or a Link, and then you're bouncing back. It's like a Compulse, but a spell card. You could also just play Compulse if you wanted to. It depends on your deck, of course, like if you're playing trap cards. But this particular card, it has the clause where it says your opponent can't respond to it, which that is a big deal in this particular format. Are cards that say you can't this card can't be responded to, which is why Droplets is one of the most powerful cards in the game as well. And we're going to talk about the budget cards that have that clause here in a minute, but Yeah, this is definitely one of those board breaker cards. A lot of people aren't thinking about this one as much as some of the other cards we're going to be typically talking about. But this card, yeah, will do the trick, and it can be a 2-for-1 depending on the kind of card you send, or at least a search. So it could be a break even. It might be a slow break even, but it would still be a break even nonetheless. All right, then we got Lightning Storm. This card is also very popular as a board breaker because this card is both Harpy's Feather Duster and Rygecki, which is also on this list. Spoiler alert, both of those cards. This card is just kind of both of those cards in one. So that's the appeal to a lot of players, is the versatility. It's always kind of been the appeal with a lot of things. That's why Ash Blossom is such a pain in the ass. But the versatility of Lightning Storm is like it can function as Rygecki. The only backlash is you can't control anything when you use it. Now we're going to be talking into the stuff that's actually affordable for you as a budget player. We just had to get through those cards. Now, one of the first things is Super Poly. More than likely, every budget player at least has their own playset of Super Poly, because a lot of budget players buy structure decks. And Shadal's, I believe, had this one. I think even the Cyber Dragon one had it. The first one. Not the Cyber Darks. So a lot of players had Super Poly. Also, there was a time where you could have picked up commons for like $2. So a lot of players have a playset of this. I have multiple. Sorry about that. I have multiple playsets of this card. It's just the commons are like, the last time I looked, are like $7, which means if you're still playing on the budget, that's $20. That's still not the worst thing in the world. Ballpark figure, of course. Now, this is another one that's seeing a lot more play, and you have like a pricey variant of it, which is the foil, but you also have commons that are like $3. So, yeah, these two cards, Super Poly and Dark Ruler No More, are the major board breakers that are happening in this format. Because frankly, we got a new fusion card. You guys, if you yesterday, if you guys saw my video, my dinosaur deck video, we got a new fusion Garura, and that card is like, oh, 2 monsters, same type, same attribute, different names. Oh, that's like every deck in the whole world, pretty much. Not all of them, but yeah, like, so Super Poly really has a lot of options now that we didn't have before, and also it's kind of like the screw you to dark decks mainly. So yeah, this is the budget player's equivalent to Droplets or Rygecki. This is the card that you're probably gonna want. Then we also have Dark Ruler No More. Now the backlash with this one is, yes, you turn off your opponent's board, but you're not going to end the game right then and there. Your opponent still gets another turn to fight back. So whatever you do has to either get you so much advantage that it's not going to matter if they blow through the board you create, or you have to create enough negations and take away as much cards as you possibly can from them if you use this card. So it's kind of a give and take there too. But these 5 cards are the major board breakers that are seeing a lot of play. Now, the reason I'm going to be showcasing you other board breaker cards that a lot of people are not thinking of is because, like I said, not everybody can afford all these cards. Now, Dark Ruler and Super Poly have options, but you may not necessarily have access to get to these cards. So I'm kind of going to showcase you all of your options. So first and foremost, we have to talk about Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, which I kind of teased earlier when I had Dogoron being seen. Because in the same vein, you actually could consider the Kaijus to be board breakers. Now, the Kaijus as board breakers, I do want to give you this warning. Because it is a 1-for-1 exchange, you are exchanging a powerful monster for a mediocre one, which is what the Kaijus essentially are for most of the time. This is kind of like, again, the give and take thing. With Kaiju Slumber, you can put 2 Kaijus out there, of course, giving your opponent the weaker one, or if you're playing something that can take advantage of, like a certain situation, like Cyber Dragons do with the machine type Kaijus. That is, something you can think about there. This is just another option. This is a once per turn, but this also is a self-replacing card, a slow break even, or a slow plus, depending on how things go. So that is something also to consider when thinking about your board breakers. However, this is a hard once per turn. You need to remember that, especially because for the cards we're about to be talking about, they are not, which is actually an advantage. Speaking of board breakers that are not hard once per turns. Rygecki and Darkhole. These two cards are not hard once per turns, and they are both at 3. That is actually the advantage, is the fact that these guys are not hard once per turns, which means if you draw multiples of them and your opponent has multiple negates, these are spells they have to answer. So, you know, unless they have something like Materia Beast, a lot of them have limited negations. So this is a card they have to answer, or their stuff's going to go away. The flip side to this is also like, before you know, like, unfortunately, is like, you know, if they are playing a monster that just doesn't care, like Ultimate Falcon or Dragoon, or even Destiny Hero, the new Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer, even him to a degree may not necessarily care if you do these things. But here's the thing: if you're Rygecki the Destiny Hero, he's out of the way. You have one shot to take everything down. Also, in the cases of Dragoon and Ultimate Falcon, these monsters who are kind of like, well, I don't care. This is, you know, if you're playing Slumber, you're probably also playing Kaijus, so there's that option there. So you could potentially go like playing all 3 or something like that. It's just a thought. Now we're gonna be talking about some really bad options. These are the cards you don't want to use. You might be able to take advantage of these cards if you are using, say, a danger variant deck. So like things like Lightning Vortex and Special Hurricane. No, these are not the most optimal. Obviously, these are a -1. However, if your opponent loses more than you do, if these spells are successful, it could be beneficial. But I'm just letting you know your options. The reason why I mentioned the dangers is because, like I said, they will proc off being the cost for these things. So you discard a card, you destroy all the face-up monsters your opponent controls. Also is not a hard once per turn, so if you have multiple stuff, you could potentially just keep blowing stuff up. Your entire opponent's board could instantly go, and of course, like, dangers are a lot of times are self-replacing too, so there's that aspect. And then we have Special Hurricane. It's the same thing, but instead of face-up monsters like with Lightning Vortex, you're blowing up special summoned monsters, so which is most of the game. Obviously, don't use this against Fluunderies. They're going to laugh at you, and rightfully so. But yeah, for everything other than that, pretty much, like, if they're not playing, but, like, yeah, I don't need to tell you. You guys get the point. These two cards, the reason why I'm mentioning them is because they can proc off danger effects. So you could get your Jackalopes, your Nessies, your Tatsunotsu's, get monsters on the board in the process of blowing stuff up, or forcing them to do negations, so your more important cards go through in your hand. Because that's the beauty of board breaker cards. Like all of these spells that I mentioned, these 5 spells I'm mentioning here, you better answer it, because if you don't answer it, you're gonna lose your whole board, and your opponent's just gonna. And of course, like, again, if these are monster heavy decks. Now that may not be the case in everything. This is why you might also want to think about things like Harpy's Feather Duster. But you know, I figure most people, when we're talking board breakers, we're talking about monsters for the most part. I could be talked into making another video like this, but for the back row based decks. But we'll talk about that another time. Some of the other cards, we do have a handful of other cards I want to mention before we head out. So the other thing that I want to mention are the cards like Mind Control and Change of Heart. These two cards are kind of, I have these two together on here because in tandem, because these two cards basically serve the same purpose. They're another spell that your opponent has to answer, but they are a 1-for-1 thing. So, like, you know, you're taking a monster, but you can't do anything really with it except for going to an extra deck monster. That's really all you can do if you're doing with Mind Control. Change of Heart, it's free reign, do whatever you want. If it is a powerful spell, your opponent does have to answer it. That's kind of the beauty of a spell like Change of Heart. However, Splight is running around, and that's another reason why certain board breakers are more important than others right now. That's why people are talking about Dark Ruler, Super Poly, and, like, you know, Droplets and Ultimate Slayer. These 4 spells in particular, because Toad's running around in Sprite decks right now. So that's the something you might have to worry about. However, if the monsters that you play are like something that, like, can't be targeted, then you may not care necessarily if they negate and take your Change of Heart, because you're gonna be like, good luck targeting a monster. Some other things to think about, like I said, we also mentioned Kaiju's board breaking. There are also slow board breaker cards like Torrential. Torrential is a slow board breaker card. Uh, look, in a trap based deck, it will get the job done. It will serve the same roles as these kinds of cards right here. Just throwing you out there that if you're a trap based deck, you do have an option for board breaking that way. Also, the last card I want to mention is Pankratops. It's one of my favorite monsters. It's one of the reasons why I even play dinosaurs is because this guy exists. This guy is a 2-for-1 exchange. There are other cards in the game that are very much like this. You have to go digging for that right now because we don't have time for me to go through every card in the game that is a 2-for-1 exchange. But basically, Dino Wrestler Pankratops, in worst scenario, is a 1-for-1, and optimally is a 2-for-1 because, optimally you beat over a monster and then you tribute pop something else. So there's a lot of these kinds of cards like that. The point of showcasing you this variety of board breakers is, like I said at the beginning of the video, is to get you guys to think outside of the box. Remember that some board breakers could be really good because they're not once per turns. Some board breakers are not spells, so they have a battle aspect to them. And some are just so powerful that your opponent has to answer them, therefore forcing them to do negations they wouldn't normally do. And then, of course, there are also the more powerful ones that say that your opponent can't respond, which are the most optimal. However, they're also the most expensive. So, depending on what your strategy is, what your budget looks like, I just wanted to give you guys a really good example of what board breaking is, what the best cards are for board breaking, as well as giving you your budget options. And hopefully this will help you as a player who is a budget player or a casual player think outside of the box and steal some wins from meta players, because there's just something satisfying about beating somebody with a $2 deck while they're playing a deck that's worth $1,000. Anyway, guys, if you liked this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. There we go. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.